Hey guys, and welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, the Bright Side Girl, and today I am doing my October wrap-up. This video is going to be up so late, like probably more around the middle of November. I actually flew out of town on Halloween to go home to Kansas City to visit my husband's family. So I have just now kind of regrouped since we've gotten home, and I really didn't want to do this video until after Halloween because that was the last day of October, and I wanted to tell you guys everything that I've read. So we're finally getting to it, and better late than never. So let me just start out saying that this month was kind of weird. Parts of it were a disappointment and parts of it were fantastic. The reason I say it was kind of a disappointment was because I had grand plans, like everybody on YouTube, of reading so many wonderful like Halloween-y type books. However, I got kind of distracted in the beginning of a month with a particular series, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. And while the book had some darker, more gothic-y tones, it was really more of a fantasy book, and it wasn't the Halloween read that I was looking for. And I had that issue with a couple of the books that I read, but some of these books I read were just phenomenal for Halloween, and I am so glad that I got to them. And I had two, actually technically three, 5-star, like for me, just love books of this month. Okay, enough blabbing. Now it's time for the wrap up. Okay, I started off with Twilight, the graphic novel of Volume 1. I read this in one sitting in like an hour. I just loved it. It ends not like the first book because there's more volumes to it, but it's just great. It's Twilight with pictures, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, now for the books that distracted me. As you might know from my September wrap-up, if you watched that, I read Fallen, and I kind of wanted to continue on with the series, and so I did. Torment, Rapture, and Passion. I think that's the right order of the Fallen series. I did not read the novella bind-up. These books were crazy. Like, I might do a separate video just on this series because I still do not know if I liked it, which probably means that I didn't. But I liked it enough to keep reading. I really enjoyed some of the characters that were in it, but if you guys think that you didn't like Fallen or you did like Fallen, you have no idea whether you like this series as a whole, because Fallen is nothing like the rest of these books, like at all. It took some crazy twists and turns, and I am still debating on whether or not to leave it a good review, but I might do a separate like series review video on that, so stay tuned. But anyway, I was kind of bummed that I read those books because, like I said, they were gothic and they have some darker atmospheres to them, because if you're not familiar with the Fallen series, it is about fallen angels, so there's like some demons and there's some stuff about the devil and stuff like that in there. But for me, it wasn't the like Halloween read I was looking for, which might have interfered with how I felt about the series as a whole, because I was just trying to read it really fast to get through it so that I could read some more Halloween stuff. So there you have it. Then I read The Witch's Guide to Cooking with Children. This is by Keith McGowan, and it is an illustrated children's book. This is a modern day retelling of Hansel and Gretel. Really short kids book. Kind of has somewhat Series of Unfortunate Event vibes, at least just the way that it read and how quickly it read and stuff like that. I liked it. It was very dark for a kid's book. I enjoyed it, and this is the first one in a series, I believe. Then I read Betrayal by Gillian Shields. This is the second book in, I think, the Immortal Quartet. I bought both of these a few months back. Really liked Immortal, and I read it really quickly. This one I did not enjoy as much. I felt like it was cheesier. I had a hard time getting through it. But again, I had that whole like, you must read Halloween books thing hanging over my head, and this one, kind of like Fallen, was a gothic, darker story, but it wasn't like the true Halloween read I was looking for. So I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. Then I had a strange issue. I read The Gates by John Connolly. This one is like the perfect Halloween read because it's about a boy and his dog, and his neighbors open up the gates of hell, and demons and ghosts and all those things kind of come out of hell and attack their little town. So perfect for Halloween. He even starts the book out trick-or-treating. I really enjoyed the beginning of it. Actually made me laugh out loud like several times, and I had to read it to my husband. This book is really interesting because he does a lot of like scientific facts in with the book. So there'll be like stuff in here about like NASA and Einstein, and they all kind of connect to the book. I really enjoyed the format. I was kind of distracted by some of my other Halloween reads, so I think that I would have enjoyed this more if I hadn't put so much pressure on myself to read certain things in October, but I did overall really like it, and I liked John Connolly's writing style. This is the first one either in a duology or a trilogy, so maybe next year I'll pick up the rest. Now, the rest of the month, I had fabulous reads, like just fabulous. So I read Dark Shimmer. This is by Donna Jo Napoli. Now, I went into this book knowing nothing. I knew that it was about this girl who was a monster, or so it says on the back, and something about mirrors. And that is all I knew, and that I'm really glad that that's all that I knew, because this is actually a twist on something, and it was so amazing. Like, it was so dark and it was so rich, and I was just so into it. It wasn't very fast paced. It's very, very lyrical, very enchanting, but I just really, really enjoyed it. And I really want to tell you guys like what it's about more, but I don't want to ruin your experience. So I'm probably going to do a separate review video on this. So if you're okay with getting not spoiled, but knowing more synopsis, then I will link that below whenever I get that up. But Dark Shimmer, fabulous. And on to my audiobook portion, I listened to 3 Dark Crowns and 1 Dark Throne by Kendare Blake. Oh my gosh, I was obsessed. I told my husband all about it. I absolutely loved it. These are about triplet sisters, and they live in a fantasy kingdom, and only one of them can rule, and they have to basically fight to the death around their 17th birthday or birth year, and see which queen will win. And one queen is a poisoner queen, so she is supposed to be able to like take poison and consume poison and give poison all really well. One's an elementalist, and she can control like flowers and the weather, and then one's a naturalist, and they are good with like animals, and they have like a pet that follows them, which they call familiar. And I just love the world building. I've heard other people say this was slow. I didn't feel like this was slow like at all, but I listened to it on audiobook, and the narrator, who I can't remember at this moment, was fabulous. She was so good, and I am not a big fan of girl narrators as often as I am male narrators, just because I feel like they do their male voices weird. And she really didn't have a lot of variation in her male voices, but the male voice that she chose to use to me was like acceptable and realistic, or at least it didn't distract me from the story. I absolutely love these. Listening to these on audiobook if you haven't already. This one like just came out, 1 Dark Throne. Sorry, they're shiny from the library. 1 Dark Throne just came out, and I was actually able to get it like the week that it came out, which I was like so excited about because I didn't think I was going to be able to get it, and I really didn't want to read it. I wanted to listen to it because whenever I find a really, really good narrator, I want to carry on and keep listening to it because that's how the story is in my head. But I'm honestly probably going to listen to these or read these again very soon because I enjoyed them that much. If you like fantasy and queens and like I'm really into that kind of stuff, magical powers and everything, then these will be the books for you. And then I did a lot of audiobooks this month. The next thing that I listened to was The Madman's Daughter by Megan Shepherd, and the second one in the trilogy, Her Dark Curiosity. And I am currently listening to the 3rd book right now, but we'll talk more about that in my November wrap up. Okay, let's talk about The Madman's Daughter. Oh my gosh, another 5-star. So good. It's a horror book. To me, this is not a horror book because I think of horror books as like blood and gore, and like that's like the theme of it is like slashers and scariness. And like while this book was very scary and has taken the new place of probably the scariest book that I've ever read, it was very story driven, very character driven, and it was not just like, oh, I'm doing all this random gory, you know, murdery type things for no reason. It had a good flow to it. It is a retelling of The Isle of Dr. Moreau, which I was just familiar with enough. I've never read it or watched a movie, but I was just familiar with it enough to really enjoy it. And it's about his daughter and how she goes to find him and all that kind of stuff. And he basically puts creatures back together, and it's just, I don't want to tell you too much because it was so good. There were so many twists and turns. I was so scared while reading this, but in like the best way, and I don't like being scared. I had to tell my husband the entire story because I needed someone to talk to because of things that were happening and twists that were happening and things I didn't expect to happen. I literally told him the entire like 300-page book because I loved it that much. Like, I have to tell you this, and oh my god, and then this happened, and he was like, oh my gosh, but he was actually into it too. And I was listening to the final part on my walk, and I literally, like, the end was like insane to me. I was walking and I was just like, what? I was just so in love with this book, and it shocked me so much, and the cover is so beautiful, and this was so good for Halloween because it had creatures and mystery, and it was gothic, and it's set in London for part of it, and then an island on part of it, and oh my gosh, it's one of my favorite books now, like, of all time. But it is like dark and creepy. If you can't handle things like that, then maybe don't read it. I am not a big scary person. The scariest book that I read up until this year was a Harry Potter book, and yes, a Harry Potter book scared me, but this narrator is amazing. She's so good. I absolutely loved it, but this case, I do think that I would have enjoyed it almost as much in written form as I did in narrating form, just because the writing is so good and the story is so good. So anyway, I absolutely loved this book. Check out The Madman's Daughter. Second book, The Dark Curiosity. I don't really want to tell you what it's about because that'll give away some spoilers, but it's the second book in the series. It is very good. It is not the same style, I guess, as the other one, just because of the content and what it's about, but it is very clever, and you love the characters, so you're really interested in it. It doesn't have as many twists and turns, in my opinion, and it's not quite as creepy, but I really enjoyed it still, just because I love the narrator, and I love the writing style, and I loved that it was in London, and like all that kind of stuff. But not as good as The Madman's Daughter, but still fantastic. And the last book I read on Halloween in almost one sitting, was Neil Gaiman and The Graveyard Book. I think that I have the illustrated edition, because it's got illustrations in it. Yes, the illustrations by Dave McKean. I really enjoyed this. I felt the same way about this that I did about The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I really liked it. There were some parts that I loved. I think that it's clever, but I wasn't completely crazy in love with it like some people are with Neil Gaiman books. So maybe I'm not like super into his writing style. I'm not sure. Like I did really enjoy it, but it has this like overly whimsical feel to it. And yeah, I don't know. I really liked it. It was a fast read. I'd read it again. I'm keeping the book, but I wasn't like over the moon in love with it or anything like that. Hopefully this video wasn't too long. That was my October wrap up. I hope to do a series review of Fallen, as well as the 3 Dark Crowns books and The Madman's Daughter. We'll see if that happens because I'm really into it, but I gotta finish Madman's Daughter first. So anyway, thank you guys for watching this, and I will see you guys next time on The Bright Side. Bye!